Hey kiddos, Mr. Salisbury here again. I'm gonna do a fun little activity that is kind of like what we did last week, except we're going to be looking at three-dimensional shapes instead of just the two-dimensional shapes that you may be familiar with. Now, before we get into that, okay, it's important that we understand three new terms that are important that we use, okay? So the shapes we were looking at last week and the shapes that you are probably familiar with, I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit better, okay, are two-dimensional shapes. So they might be like a rectangle, okay, or it could be a square, okay, or it could be a triangle, okay. So we know these shapes as two-dimensional or 2D, okay, and that's because that they have a length and a width, okay. They go in one direction up and down, and they also go from left to right, okay. But as you know, okay, and I have a couple examples here, most of the things that we see out in the real world are actually three-dimensional, okay. Well, for the two-dimensional shapes, okay, we might call these, okay, sides, okay. And you might look at this as like being the whole shape, all right. When we look at three-dimensional shapes, we're not going to be talking about sides. We're going to be using different terms, okay. And really what the three terms that we're going to be using are, and I'll just give you the terms first, and you can write them down on your paper if you want, because I think that you'll actually be able to figure out what they are just through process elimination. So we have what we call is a face, okay? We also have an edge, okay? And then finally, we have a corner. Just like so, okay? Now, a face and an edge, there are no such things as really a face or an edge on a two-dimensional shape, okay? So we're going to be looking at a three-dimensional shape and making sure that we understand what it means by face, edge, and corner, because the clues they're going to be giving us are going to be using those terms. So let me take a rectangular prism, okay, which is the same as the shape here. And when we look at this shape, the flat parts, okay, those are known as the faces, okay? So this is one face, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We'd say this has 6 faces, okay? So if we look at the face here, I guess the best way to do it would be maybe what I can do is actually just, instead of trying to put it into words, I think it'd be best to actually kind of show you what the face is. And so if I can draw, or you can even do it on one of those if you'd like, because it takes some practice to do a three-dimensional shape. Okay. There's my shape, right? This would be a face. Just like that. I'm going to zoom right in. Okay. Those are the faces, right? And so, for example, a rectangular prism has 6 faces. The edges are what we once knew as sides, okay? And so the edges are going to be these parts here. Okay, be careful we don't call them corners, because that's where the two edges come together. Those are corners. These are edges. And so if I could draw the same picture to give you an idea as my example, just like so. All right, and I'm gonna use a different color so you can kind of see it. I'll use purple. All right, these are edges. That's one edge, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But remember, there are some on the back side we can't see, and that's why it's kind of nice to have something we can look at. Now you can see that I've, made one out of paper, but if you are at home, which I think all of us are, I mean, you can even look at a tissue box. I mean, there are so many different three-dimensional shapes around the house. That'll really help, especially when we look at edges and corners and faces, because we can't see on the other side. Okay, so that would be 1 edge, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, because there are actually some on that back side. And of course, the faces and the edges will be different depending on the actual shape. All right, so the faces are that, the edges are that, and then the corners, I think that you'll get, that's where the edges come together. Right? So it would look, okay, I'll use a different color, use pink. These are the corners. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's a back corner here we can't see. So there's actually 8. And if you have the example here, I can do it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are my 8 corners. Okay, so one's actually in the back there you can't see. So just to give you an idea, a rectangular prism or a cube, okay, one that actually is three-dimensional but kind of looks more like a rectangle or a square, you're going to see that they have 6 faces. And edges, okay, they really should have 12, which makes sense. Because if you really start thinking about it, if you have 2 faces, okay, that would make 1 edge. If you add another face, it's going to double the amount that you have. So if we have 6 faces, it makes sense that we'd have 12 edges. Okay, and that's just looking at just these. And in the corners, we know just for these shapes here are 8. Because all of the clues that they're going to be giving us are based on, okay, faces. And I think later it talks about edges and corners. So, just like we did last week, a little bit of process of elimination. It says the mystery shape has 5 faces. Okay, so I'm going to look at my first shape here, which is a hexagonal prism. Again, I mean, it would be best if you actually had one made. I have one made here because you could just count them. So it is going to be a little bit more challenging to visualize, okay, what's on the back side of these shapes. Okay, and so for here, I like to write right on it. Okay, there's a face here, and then I know the back side's going to have a face as well. So right away, I know that there's 2, okay, faces at least, and it's a hexagonal, all right? So it's a hexagon, which means that it would have 6 sides. So I know that this is 3, 4, 5. That's the 6th you can't see. Right here you can't see the 7th, and it's on the bottom there's 8. Okay? And so for a hexagonal prism, there are 8 faces. Knowing that there are 8 faces, we know that it cannot be the mystery shape because it has to have 5. Okay? So gone. Can't be it. Let's look at the faces for my triangular prism. Okay? 1, 2 on the back side, 3 on the bottom, 4. Be careful you don't forget that there's a back here too, which would be my 5. Okay? It says the mystery shape has 5 faces, so this works. Now, we don't know that that's the mystery shape yet. We got to stop and kind of make sure that we look at the rest. Here we have a pentagonal prism. 1, 2 on the back, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this has 7 faces, which means that cannot be my mystery shape. Okay? And then finally, we have a rectangular prism. And we got 1 face, 2, 3. The bottom you can't see is 4. 5 is the side we can't see there. And remember, there's the back, which is 6. So it has 6 faces. Cannot be the mystery shape. And I'm sorry you didn't see any of that because I was too far zoomed in. So I'm writing right on my paper here, process elimination. If it has 5 faces, this one had 7, this one had 6, this one had 8. That's the only one that has 5. Now it says 3 of the faces are rectangles. Now I am going to go through that because it's looking at the actual face. And so that face would be a triangle. But if you look at this face, that's a rectangle. The face that's in the back side would be a rectangle. And the bottom would be a rectangle. So 3 of the faces would indeed be rectangles. The other 2 would be triangles. Be that one and then on the other side. So mystery shape must be a triangular prism. And how many corners does it have? Well, we didn't count the corners, so let's actually do that. I kind of drew all over it, so it's hard to see. I'm going to draw it again. Okay. Looks something like that, I guess. Okay. And so the corners would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's 1 in the back corner here you can't see, which would be 6. Okay. So, and again, I keep saying this, but it would be best if you actually had a shape that you could be looking at, okay, because then you can count them. So if you have any shapes that are up here, doesn't have to be perfect, you can use them. It could be as simple as, even for a rectangular prism, you could even use this. Okay, still going to have the same amount of corners, faces, and edges. So I just counted that we had the 6 corners and edges. Okay, I'd use maybe a different color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is in the back you can't see. Okay, right there. 6, 7 right here. And then there's the 8th that connects right here that you can't see. And then there's the final, there's the 9th that comes in here. Okay. So you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 here, which means there would be 4 on the other side. And then you have the bottom there. And so the amount of edges we have are 9. 9 edges. Okay. And just to kind of give you an idea, triangular prism, that it does indeed have 9 edges, because it's easy to count the edges twice. 1 edge, 2, 3. So there's 3 on the long side. 1, 2, 3. It's 3 and 3 is 6. 1, 2, and 3 is 6. Okay, corners, same deal. 1, 2, 3 corners on this side. 1, 2, 3 corners on this side. Okay, so the rest are going to be pretty much the same. It's going to be asking for you to kind of visualize and look at how many faces there are, or how many different things that there are, corners and edges, but I think that you can do okay. So there is really no way to kind of submit this for me to be looking at it, and so that's why I have the answer sheets uploaded as well. So what I would suggest is try to do this on your own, do the best you can, and then have somebody at home, whether it be brother, sister, dad, mom, whoever's at home, check it for you. Being that the best learning that we actually have, that we get from, is when we make mistakes and the conversations that we have about those mistakes. And so anytime that you are looking at your own paper, you lose the opportunity to have those conversations because you're not going to be able to do it with yourself. So the more people that you can have and talk about why you've done certain things, the better it's going to be. So until next week, Salisbury is out.